Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Today, we've got a very special guest on the sports page with Bob Case, a guy that's been basically his whole life, adult life at least, has been devoted to Major League Baseball, not only here in the United States, but in Japan, but a manager and a player. He's an expert in the game. He's now a commentator. You know him as Bobby Valentine, and Bob Case knows him as a very dear friend. Bob, you guys go back to when both of you probably were teenagers, right? When you guys first met, is that about when you and Bobby Valentine first became friends?
Bob's much older than me. I was a teenager, and he was in midlife crisis at the time. Yeah.
When I first met Bobby, I remember Rod Dato being over at Casey's house talking about him. And I first met him, I think it was 71 or 72 at an old timers game. And we were down there, and that was one of those, I think Jackie Robinson was there and Charlie Garrett. It was like the greatest old timer game I've ever been to. And Bobby was a part of the Dodgers at that time, wearing number 2. And I just remember he one thing about Bobby, he's never changed. He's always full of energy. When I see him or I'm around him for an hour or two, I feel like I got to go take a nap. And he's always been like that. And in baseball, his career. And I can't wait to hear from him. And my favorite story about Bobby, when we go to this, we meet a bunch of ball players for lunch, and he pulled out, we were down at Phil Triney's restaurant, and he pulls out a baseball signed in red by Casey Stengel. And he told me the story, how Rod Dato took him over to Casey's house and everything. And it was so great to see that and just know that he had met Casey. And believe me, Casey knew who Bobby Valentine was. But I just want to.
It's to Bob become a Trojan on the baseball.
That's right.
Not use a Trojan, become a Trojan. Yeah, he could have given me better advice by using it. You know what I mean?
Well, you said, Bobby, that Bob is a little bit older, so he's always looking forward to taking a nap after spending any time with anybody, right?
I got to take a nap if you can, especially after a big lunch at Phil Triney's. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, well, Bob, your career, in my opinion, really took off at the high school age. Football, basketball, baseball. Did you do anything else? Because it seemed like every sport was within your grasp. You probably were a great dart thrower and a bowler and a guy that could run track and do whatever. Is that where you really developed a love for all the games that you were able to play and excel at there in Stanford?
Yeah, high school and junior high school. I think the greatest sport that I ever participated in that taught me all about balance. It taught me about teamwork. It taught me about routine and dealing with other people was ballroom dancing. I was a international ballroom dance champion where I danced at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City at the Fontainebleau Hotel, won an international championship there at 14 years old. When I was doing what I was doing. Yeah, there's the ballroom stuff. And, the waltz, foxtrot, and tango were right up my alley. And again, balance and rhythm and all the things that you need in sport, I think I learned on the dance floor.
That's amazing that you would say that. I've watched movies of, let's say, Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire, and watching them with their quick feet, they get up in the air, they do a little kick or something like that. Herschel Walker, Lynn Swan were players that took ballet to learn the same type of balance, coordination, how to control your body in different ways. It's funny that you say that because there are a lot of athletes that would never think of doing that, and there are others that would say, no, it's absolutely critical for me, and it was for you. Is that correct?
Thank God my mom wanted me to do something other than just play sports. You got to have some culture. And, I had a couple choices back in the 60s, either sing or dance, and I couldn't sing. So,
okay.
Hey, Harper, Casey Stengel sent Bill Moose Scaron to Arthur Murray Dance Studio.
Yeah.
Footwork around the base.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get to hold a pretty girl every now and then. That's not so bad either, is it, Bobby?
And she was older, and she knew what she was doing, and she was pretty, and what an athlete she was. Pam Dembski absolutely. Was her name. Yeah.
There you go. The infamous Pam Dembski. Yeah, the World's Fair. I took a picture of this because I read somewhere that you were part of the opening ceremonies for that, right?
Wow. You did your research. Yeah. I danced along with 3 other couples, the Viennese Waltz. We opened up the New York Pavilion at the New York World's Fair in 1964. And it was a wonderful occasion. No photographs. because who the hell had a camera that could develop a photo? So there's nothing other than a recollection, I guess.
Yeah, just great memories of that. But awesome. Gosh, in the history of America, the World's Fair was such an important part of technology and international flavor and getting to know what else is around on the globe. And even though it was nearing the end of its life cycle, go ahead.
Yeah, and that was built in the Flushing Meadows, the World's Fair of '64, and that was the place that the Walter O'Malley was trying to be convinced to move the Dodgers to, right next to, adjacent to where they were building the World's Fair. He decided to go out to Chavez Ravine, and instead in 60, whatever it was, they built Shea Stadium, and the Mets came alive.
Yeah, so is that the same lot or pretty doggone close to where Shea is now in Flushing Meadows?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, that globe that you just showed is still standing in the Flushing Meadow Park, just adjacent to where Citi Field is now and Shea Stadium was.
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah, tremendous part of history. Amazing. Well, my next slide, you beat me to it. I had already advanced to it. You go 9-0, you win a state championship in football. What was baseball like for you? Did you know that was your best sport and where you were going to get more highly recruited? Because you had SC, you had Nebraska, you had Notre Dame. I mean, you pretty much had the pick of the litter in terms of where you wanted to go to college.
Well, football just came easy for me. I was a real fast guy. I was strong, and like I said, I had balance, agility, had moves, all that stuff. So by the time I was a senior, I was being recruited to play football. There weren't many baseball scholarships out in those days. Even when I accepted a scholarship to go to USC, it was a football scholarship. But John McKay and Rod Dato were friends, and they agreed that I could, just like Steve Sagi could. Steve Sagi was, of course, the quarterback when OJ was playing, and I was being recruited to USC. I went out to meet Steve Sagi because he was playing both sports. So I was going to have a football scholarship, but I was going to be allowed to play on the freshman baseball team because that was going to be the first year in 1968 that freshmen were going to be allowed to play in the Pac-8. So, yeah, all that stuff was kind of, coming together. And football was just something that came easy to me. Baseball was a little harder, and it was my true love.
Baseball was? Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about the Arizona State connection, because from what I'm reading, you got Rod Dato on the left, and one of the more infamous programs, but not far behind, is Arizona State. Talk a little bit about how you ended up at both. Were you a portal guy before there was a portal?
No, actually, I signed professionally, right? In '68, I also signed a letter of intent to go to USC, but that became null and void when I became a professional in baseball. But in 1968, as Bob could tell you, if you weren't a full-time student, married with children, or crippled, you went to Vietnam. And the Dodgers, when they were giving me my $65,000 bonus for being their number one draft choice, had me also sign an adjacent little paper that said I would remain a full-time student so that I would not go to Vietnam. Well, fast forward a couple of years, I'm playing in the minor leagues. I'm going to USC during the winter time. As a matter of fact, in '69, I rushed from Spokane, Washington to get down to USC by September 3rd to sign my check to enroll in classes and become a full-time student. Well, I also got called to the big leagues in September of that year.
Oh my gosh.
And Billy Buckner and I, who were roommates in AAA and also roommates at USC, were full-time students in the daytime. And for the 9 games that the Dodgers had in September at Dodger Stadium, we were in Dodger uniform at night. And, Buck was one hell of a good-looking guy, but it didn't hurt any with the girls that he was also a Dodger running around USC. So then fast forward, yes, about Arizona State. I got beamed in 1970, the last day of the season in AAA, and the Dodgers didn't know if I was going to be able to play again. I was the MVP of the Pacific Coast League and led the league in batting, but after getting beamed and having my cheekbone pushed down 3.5 inches and having to go through my skull with a little stainless steel crowbar and pull my cheek up and put it back in place, I said, I wonder if this guy will ever be able to hit again.
Holy cow.
They transferred me over to Arizona State. I didn't transfer. They transferred me there because there was the Arizona Fall League. And I had to, once my stitches were out and my hair grew back in, I played in the Arizona Fall League while attending Arizona State. And that's the only reason I became a Sun Devil.
Unbelievable. I didn't know anything about that. So,
and then crazy enough, and crazy enough, I got to work out a little with the Arizona State baseball team while I was recuperating from this being beamed. And I also was playing football for the fraternity flag football team. So before spring training, the year after I was the MVP in AAA at 20 years old, playing flag football for Arizona State Sigma Chi championship flag football team, I was clipped. And I went to spring training a full leg cast because I had a total reconstruction of my right knee, done coincidentally by Dr. Frank Jobe, who, as we all know, was then later the father of the Tommy John surgery with Robert Curlin in L.A. And my knee got better after a couple of years and all that stuff. But I got traded from the Dodgers because of that injury to the Angels. And the guy who became the Angel manager is kind of in the news today because he was the Arizona State coach, Bobby Winkles, who was the first college coach to become a major league manager. And I got to play for him in 1973. As you know, San Francisco is doing the same thing with the Tony from Tennessee, who's being a major league manager coming right from the University of Tennessee. So all that stuff was, I don't know if it was coincidental or if it was serendipitous or whatever the hell it was, but all those things kind of came together in my life.
Well, yeah, no kidding. I mean, gosh, first and foremost, Bob, he has partial brain surgery to fix his face. Then before he gets a chance to heal up, he gets clipped. And, he, of all things, Bobby, did you have to kind of provide any disinformation regarding how you got hurt when you have to go into spring training at all? Hey, what's the matter with your knee? What'd you do? Oh, I slipped and fell in the shower. I mean, did they know that you were playing on the flag football team?
So I called Tommy Lasorda, who was my minor league manager, who was good friends with Al Campanis, who was the general manager of the team. And I had come from the infirmary after I went to the bar to celebrate the championship flag football team. They told me that I had torn ligaments in my knee, and I called Tommy from a payphone, and he had Al Campanis call the payphone back, and he said, well, what happened? And I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. My idol was Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle hurt his knee while shagging a fly ball and stepping on a sprinkler head, and sprinklers at the time were kind of new to the world. And so I said I was shagging some fly balls, and I stepped on a sprinkler head. And then when I got to the hospital and Frank Jobe examined me and realized that it was not a twist, but it was someone who hit me, and I got hit from the side, and you know how knees contract once you get clipped. He said, you weren't stepping on a sprinkler. I said, no, I was playing flag football. So I tried to lie. It just didn't work.
So Bobby, that right knee was the same right knee you hurt on the wall, right?
Wow. Yeah. So then I'm playing for Bobby Winkles, and I run after a fly ball in 73. This is 68 with Tommy Lasorda. You see Billy Buckner, Steve Garvey, and me and Tommy Lasorda in that group shot there.
Yes. I'm sorry. I flipped with you.
This
That's in Ogden, right?
Billy
Ogden
Buckner on the left. Steve Garvey, number 5, and Bobby V, number 3, and Tommy Lasorda there as our manager in Ogden, Utah, 1968. That's one of my favorite photos of all time. We won a championship there also. I was the MVP of that team also. And Tommy was the manager of the league, and that's how he got to go to AAA the next year. He went from rookie ball to AAA, and he took me with him from rookie ball to AAA. And he's always said that he didn't like me because he was Italian. I don't want you to think that. But he said he liked me because I was Italian. You know? So that's how that thing all worked. Yeah. I then playing for Bobby Winkles in 1973. I moved to short. I was a shortstop on his team. I made the team out of spring as the shortstop. I was batting third and all that nonsense. And then he asked me to play center field because the center fielder had a bad back. We were playing in Kansas City on AstroTurf, and I played center field for that day. It was going to be for one day, and that's the day that Nolan Ryan threw his first no-hitter.
Wow.
As an Angel in 1973. I was a center fielder. We came back home. Bobby Winkle said, well, I'm a little superstitious. Let's not change the lineup. And I said, okay, let's not change the lineup. And then 2 days later, I ran into the wall and broke my leg. The same right leg that I had reconstructed knee surgery. I now had a broken tibia and fibula. Yeah, you see that right leg? It's kind of pointing in the wrong direction, isn't it?
It's not going in the right direction at all, is it, Bobby? That is amazing.
Right.
Yeah. And my understanding is the general manager of the Angels said, for an extra $1,000, I should have not had a chain link fence. We should have had it all boarded up. A little too late for you,
really.
Right?
Yeah, if you see that fence, that fence is a tarpaulin, a green tarp, stretched over the chain link fence, which happened to be the same fence that was there for years. And you probably have seen the great catch by Freddie Lynn colliding with Brian Downing in left center field playing for the Angels. Well, it was the same fence that I collided into 10 years before. So they never replaced it. And it kind of interesting that that's what it was.
It's
Bobby, I want to ask you,
and a bad day for you. Do you remember getting up from? Well, no, you didn't get up. The next picture I have of you is being carted off by your guys. Right? You had a bunch of guys that basically are a MASH unit, and obviously you knew something was serious when that happened, right?
Oh yeah, it was. I was looking at the bottom of my shoe when I came down on my back, so my leg was pointing in the wrong direction, and they put me on the stretcher and carried me off. My leg was wobbling around. Yeah, that was a drag.
Hey, Bobby, were you ever you were never the same after that, were you?
No. It bent. It healed, but it healed at an 18-degree bend one direction and a 20-degree bend at the other direction. So, all that balance and agility I was talking about early, It's just for you, just for edification. It's the same break that Joe Theismann had when Lawrence Taylor hit him. And coincidentally, when I was on a recruiting trip going to Notre Dame, I was in the same bunk room as Joe Theismann, who was a freshman quarterback at Notre Dame at the time. And so I got a call from him when he was in the hospital. Hey, what did they do wrong with your leg? I don't want them to do the same thing with mine.
Oh, gosh.
So they actually put a plate in his leg to keep it straight, where they just tried to make it like this and let the cast heal it without any metal in there, and that's why it bent when he healed.
Unbelievable.
My leg's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
It's a pain in
hey,
the
Bob, someone wants to get a hold of you real badly. Go on mute. And
if I'm not here, Bob.
It's Justin Dado, believe it or not.
Bobby, I would imagine with the speed, the agility, everything that you had learned to do, and it was so natural for you that it became arduous to do the rehab to try to get back to that same level, knowing full well that the strength and the pliability of your right leg to be able to plant, to be able to push off, to be able to lift it up the right way. What was that like for you, having to relearn how to walk, to run at major league level speed, and to try to hit again?
Well, as I said, I had the knee operation and I had my face busted. And I came back from those pretty easily, even though it took about a year and a half for the knee to quite be what it should be. I wore, Bob will remember, a guy named Dr. Nichols created a knee brace that Joe Namath wore after he hurt his knee back in 69, I guess, after 69. So I got to wear this big, arduous knee brace for a year and a half.
Right.
But once the knee brace came off, my leg was okay. My quad was built back up and I was in good stead. So after I broke my leg, I figured the same thing. Well, it'll take a year and I'll get back in uniform and then I'll be fine. But that never happened because the leg was bent. Yeah. And, it wasn't the rehab that there is today. What the hell? I had a universal gym machine that I was using. And I had to go to a college to have a trainer work with me because there wasn't anything really in the major leagues that could, no weight training and no PTs, none of that stuff at the time. Yeah.
Nautilus hadn't been invented yet. And medicine balls and that little thing that spins around to try to take all the fat off of your waist was still a very popular machine in most gyms back then. Hey, before I forget, if you wouldn't mind, do me a favor. Is there anyone on earth other than James Earl Jones that deserves the spot of narrating some of the great movies of all time than Frank Jobe? Didn't he have a great movie voice? I mean, a documentary type thing? What?
Bob Curlin.
Really?
Yeah, Bob Curlin, the predecessor of Frank Jobe, that Frank Jobe studied under, the Curlin sports medicine.
Yeah.
He had the amazing baritone voice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not Frank. Yeah. Good for you, though, that you do. Yeah. Same office.
Yeah. So either one. See, I didn't get to see Curlin when I was a kid. My mother took me to see Jobe when I had Osgood Slaughter, and Frank says, "Mrs. LeBel, your son has Osgood Slaughter's disease."
Yes.
And he said it'll be at least a year or two before he'll be ready to resume athletic. He's 14-letter vocabulary. Yeah. And I heard a year and my mother heard or two. And guess who won the battle before I could go play football in high school?
Or 2-1.
Yeah. Yeah. Not 21, but yeah, I had to sit out 2 years because thanks, Mom. She had better ears than I did. I only heard 1 year. So
yeah, Frank Jobe spoke very slowly, though, and he did have a baritone, but Bob Curlin's resonated. It was like Ted Williams. When they talk, everyone listens.
Yeah. Well, part of your resume includes a number of different stops and some of the great relationships that you were able to build with some of the players, managers, and personnel that are around, including Bob. You first met Bob. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Go right ahead. No, okay. I'm sorry. You were getting. I'm going. So Bob Case, talk a little bit about Bobby Valentine and knowing what a guy he was in the locker room and other guys kind of surrounded around. The center of the conversation on numerous occasions, right?
I heard about Bobby. Before I really knew him personally or anything, I heard about him from all the other players, and he was like, every team has like a leader kind of guy. Al the Bull Ferrara, believe it or not, was a leader for the 60s Dodgers. He was, out having fun and everything, him and Padres. Those two guys were guys that everybody was attracted to. And Bobby V was the same with the Dodgers. Even though he was a young kid, everybody liked him. Everybody really liked him, and they liked what he brought to the park, and I've learned, what's interesting about this podcast, I've learned more about Bobby than I ever knew, right? Just no, serious. I didn't know about the ballroom dancing thing. That's unbelievable. So it's like, you can know of somebody, and I know about his whole baseball career, but this other stuff is great. It's great to hear.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine being a really good hitter, being fast, getting on base, and you probably know the numbers better than I do, Bobby, but let's just say a right-handed batter with speed like what you have. Let's say 19 out of 20 times you hit the ball between third and short, you're going to get thrown out. But there's that one additional time that you go, nope, I beat it out. whether the third baseman had to do a double clutch or the backhand there by the shortstop. And so your batting average and everything, speed kills. And you had that, especially early on in your career before that injury that you had with the Angels. And that's what you had. I mean, you didn't have to work at it. You just hustled and you played hard. Next thing you know, you're hitting 320, 340, you were hitting almost 400 there in the month of April back in the early 70s with the Angels. I mean, goodness gracious. A good eye at the plate, a great attitude, and a guy that runs fast and gets on base. Who wouldn't want to be around that guy? But if you're the life of the party after the game as well, that's just icing on the cake, right?
He loved baseball. He loved the game of baseball. Hence, he becomes a tremendous major league manager. So he was managerial material way back then, if I look back.
Well, that's what they said. That's what Tommy said after I broke my leg and I went back to winter ball to play for Tommy Lasorda for the Licey Tigres in the Dominican Republic. And we had been together in 72 before I got traded to the Angels, and we won a Caribbean Series, and I was the MVP, and I was back in full form after the knee operation and the beaning. And then I broke my leg and went back to him in 74. And he said, "Hey, Tommy, I'm not sure these people think I could still play. Let me know what you think because you haven't seen me in a while." And at the end of that winter league season, he said, "Why don't you start thinking about being a coach?"
Ooh,
and
okay.
That's when I knew I wasn't going to, be a major league player again. And basically from 75 on, I was an extra piece on a team, and I was thinking about being a coach, and I was helping other people. And by the time I was 32 years old, I was a third base coach for the New York Mets.
Yeah. It kind of quickly disappears. Do you actually value the fact that Tommy was somewhat straight with you and going, hey, you may want to look at other things? Because here I've got you with the Padres. You had another another year with the Mets or two. And then the Mariners. Was that the last of the Mohicans for you? Could you see the writing that was on the wall and go, yeah, the playing days are pretty much done, right?
Yeah, the Met thing was, I got there and they had a Dr. Jim, I forget his name. Anyway, he said, "Hey, listen, don't worry about your cricket leg. I'm going to go in and give you an operation on your ankle and make it so that the cricket leg conforms to your ankle, and then you're going to have balance and mobility again and be able to bend your ankle the way it should." So, James Parks is his name. And so I had another operation during the winter with the Mets and came back in 78, and there was no chance of it being any better. So I got released, and next thing I know, I got a tryout. I went to see my best friend. This is a cool story. I got released by the Mets in 79 in spring training by Joe Torre, interestingly enough, who was the player manager of the Mets at the time, who then became, of course, the nemesis of mine when I became a Met manager, and he was the Yankee manager.
Yes.
But he released me, and I went down to see my best friend, Tommy Paciorek, who was with the Mariners. So he flew from Florida to Arizona to see Wimpy in Tempe, Arizona. On my way to Tucson, it was the last 2 days of spring training because in Tucson, another teammate of mine that Bob knows named Jeff Torberg, teammate of mine with the Dodgers and the Angels, is now the manager of the Indians, and he was going to give me a tryout, even though he said there was no room on his team, but I was going to fly across the country and get my final tryout. When I went into the locker room to see Tommy Paciorek in the late morning this day, on my way to Tucson, the third baseman on the team, Bill Stein, caught his hand in the refrigerator, and there's blood all over the clubhouse. As I walked into the little clubhouse in Tempe, and I said, "What happened?" He says, Steiny just caught his hand in the refrigerator. And I said, "What's Steiny do?" He says, "He's plays third base." I said, "Well, who's going to take his place?" And Wimpy said, "I don't think we have anyone to play this game." It was the last day of spring training for the Seattle Mariners. And I walked into Daryl Johnson's office, who was the manager of the managers, and said, "Hey, Daryl, I'm Bobby Valentine. I could play third base." And they gave me a uniform, number 42. And I went out and played in their final spring training game and got 4 hits. and wound up making the Seattle Mariners team.
That's a great story.
And that was my last year of playing with in baseball. It was 1979. Yeah.
Bobby, in this picture here on the left, you're wearing number 7, not 42, I guess, which no one can wear anymore. But your batting stance, your legs are bent a little bit more. You're bent at the waist a little bit more than when you first started. Was there anything about your style of hitting that kind of changed throughout your 8, 9, 10 years of playing that you noticed helped you see the ball better, or to put the bat on the ball with more consistency? Was there any change that you had that you developed on your own?
Well, you did everything on your own, or you did it with your teammates. Obviously,
Okay.
there's no
Right.
video analysis or any of that stuff. No, I mean, I was a lousy hitter in those days. I was just surviving. That wasn't anything I was doing because I evolved. That was just hanging on, just trying to figure out what to do to fool people for a while.
Okay. Yeah, hey, just doing the best you can with what you got, right?
Yep.
So you finish up with the Mariners, and then what? You've got minor leagues, you're managing, or you're coaching. What was the next thing on the list for you? Did you know? Did you have a plan?
I had no plan. I went home to my hometown of Stamford, Connecticut. I went to a charity dinner where Howard Cosell was being honored. Andy Robustelli was general manager of the New York Giants at the time. He was from my hometown. His son and I played against each other in high school. I got invited to this dinner. During that dinner, I sat across from a guy who had a computer company, and next to the new place that he was making his computer company was a derelict bar, and the girls didn't want to come and be key punchers in his computer company. He said, if you can't play baseball, what are you going to do? I said, I had no idea. He says, you want to go into the restaurant business with me? And I said, I'll give it a try. So I became a part owner of a restaurant in my hometown that lasted 38 years in that location. We had 7 other locations around the country, and I made a pretty fair living over that. So for a year, I just washed dishes, bartended, flipped hamburgers, and then went to a charity dinner for Tommy Lasorda in Niles, Ohio, where Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was being honored because he and his sister just bought the 49ers.
Yeah.
And I got on the dais, I was sitting next to a guy who I talked with all night. I didn't get his name because he had a real weird first name, but afterwards we went out, had some drinks, and a week later he called me. I was at my restaurant, and he said, hey, hi, this is Ballard Smith. And I didn't remember who Ballard Smith was. He said, we sat together at the DeBartolo dinner in Niles, Ohio. I said, oh, yeah, hi, Ballard. How are you? He says, I'm good. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I just became the president of the San Diego Padres because my father, Ray Kroc, owns it. He had just married Ray Kroc's daughter.
Oh, my
Do
God.
you want to be a minor league instructor for the San Diego Padres? And I said, well, I'm running the restaurant. He said, oh, any chance you have, if you just go and be an instructor, I'd love being with you. Lasorda says you're great. So I did a year of flying in and out of minor league towns for the Padres, giving Mike Ivy a #1 draft choice and other guys the tips that I had learned along the way. And the next thing I knew, the Mets wanted me to do the same thing. And then Junior Gilliam passed away, and Tommy called the Mets, who I was a minor league employee with. Tommy wanted me to be the first base coach of the Dodgers, and Frank Cashin, the GM of the Mets, said, oh, no, you can't have him as a big league first base coach because he's going to be our big league first base coach.
Holy
which
cow.
I had no idea about, and neither did the Mets. But because the Dodgers wanted me, the Mets weren't going to let me go to the Dodgers, so they made me, instead of a minor league roving instructor, a major league base coach when I was 32 years old.
How about
3
that?
years later,
Yeah.
my roommate with the Mets, Tom Grieve, became the general manager of the Texas Rangers. And at 35 years old, he called me up and said, hey, I want you to come out and be our manager. And I had an interview with their owner and their general manager. And they're at 35 years old. I'm getting thrown out of a game wearing a Texas Ranger uniform. Yeah, that's how that all evolved.
My goodness.
Wow.
Well, the relationships, like I mentioned earlier, you Bill Buckner, and you mentioned Tom Paciorek, another Dodger, and Jeff Torborg, and Tommy Lasorda. They all, you must have made a great impression at one point or another to where they not only enjoy you, but they recommend you for certain things. And baseball is such a tight-knit group. Now, there are folks that may not want anything to do with Lasorda, but there's others that will listen to him. And they obviously, in the Mets organization, next thing you know, you're managing. God, what a great story. I mean, this is fantastic. And you're, out of the league for 3 or 4 years, and then you're back in at an instructional, first base coach, and then managing.
Yeah, first base coach during spring training, but Frank Howard was the third base coach. And our manager, George Bamberger, at the time for the New York Mets, didn't like the way Frank Howard was given signs. So on opening day in Philadelphia of 1983, George Bamberger called me into the office and said, I know Frank is a very good first base coach, and I want him to be our first base coach. I want you to be our third base coach. And I think he was doing that so I could fail, because I was a big mouth young guy and George Bamberger was a quiet old guy, and we didn't mix all that well. But I was on the staff because Frank Cashin put me on the staff, who was the general manager. And on opening day in that year, I was the third base coach for the New York Mets, and it was interesting.
Bobby, did you have to tell Frank is like 6'5" and an enormous man, even in his older age. Did you have to tell him, or did somebody else tell him that he was getting moved over?
No, actually, George Bamberger, who's the manager, moved him over, and that was all kind of weird, because years later I became the manager of the Mets. Dallas Green was the guy I was replacing. Right. Frank Howard was the first base coach for Dallas Green. And I said, hey, Frank, why don't you stay on the staff? And he said, I have to be loyal to Dallas. And he didn't stay on my staff. So we coached together.
Yeah.
Frank took George Bamberger's place as manager, because when we were in L.A. during the season of a terrible season, George Bamberger came in the middle of the clubhouse after batting practice and said, boys, I'm going fishing. And he quit. And when he quit, Frank Cashin, who was on the road trip, came in and appointed Frank Howard to be the manager. So I was a coach for Frank, and then when he was a manager, then I became a manager. I wanted him to be a coach for me, but he didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Oh, man. Well, again, relationships and guys that just kind of churn, if you will. Looking at your Mets staff, correct me if I'm wrong, Cookie Rojas was a part of that. Al Jackson, Jim, Mookie Wilson. You get Mookie Wilson on the staff there. You probably had a great deal of fun when it was just the coaches only, right? I mean, you hear some guys that absolutely love the game. Hold on, I got to get my glasses out because John Stearns. Yeah, John Stearns and Tom Robeson. I mean, Tom House was a part of your staff at one point or another. I mean, all these guys that you've known throughout the ages, and you bring them on, and let's go to work, right? Let's do a job.
Yeah. John Stearns, Mookie Wilson, and Bob Appodaca, the pitching coach, and I all were teammates in '77 when I was at the Mets. Now it's '96, almost 20 years later, and I hired them to be coaches with me, which is a fun experience, absolutely, along with Randy Neiman, who was also on that '86 championship Met team.
Okay, yeah. Do you mind me asking Tom House? I mentioned him just a moment ago.
Yeah.
He's now known as the quarterback whisperer. He says, I don't look at bodies. I don't look at skin. I look at skeletons. And I know that arm positioning and all that kind of stuff. Tom Brady paid a small fortune to spend with him. Tom House catches Hank Aaron's 714. Billy Buckner wanted that ball. And you and Billy, I'm sure, talked about that at one point or another. Then he stays in the game and he's managing, and you have him on your staff at one point or another. Talk about him.
Okay, yeah. So Tom House, I played against him, and he's an SC guy and all that good stuff. But when I became a manager, my general manager, Tom Grieve, had interviewed Tom House, and he liked his theory and liked his ideas. So he advised I interview him, and I hired him as my first pitching coach in Texas. What we did in 1986 revolutionized throwing and basically everything that's being done today in baseball, where we brought over a guy who is the Olympics throws coach for the Israeli Olympic team. They happened to get some medals, and people thought it was revolutionary. Tom House and Gideon Ariel and a guy named Bob Keiss all got together on my staff. We had computers. We digitized people. We had 3D imaging. This is in 1987, folks, by the way.
Yeah.
And we figured out how it was that the body works so you throw properly. We started with a javelin thrower and realized that stopping and blocking action and propelling the thing forward was the same thing in javelin and shot putting and discusing as it was in pitching. And so Tom House went from being the pitching guru to the quarterback's whisperer, only because, once again, propelling it forward applied all the same principles of blocking and stopping and the early digitized figures from this little closet in Texas that we operated out of, our computer operation out of, has evolved to what's happening today.
So you were Moneyball before Moneyball, using technology and being open to have the kinesiology of movement and motion and trying to help your guys stay on the field a little bit longer. Is that part of what you were doing?
And in 1986, I also had a sabermetrician on my staff who was a metrics person who dealt with numbers, who wrote essays, and his name was Craig Wright. And by 1990, he decided that people are taking numbers too seriously, and he went off to be an author. But, Bill James and Craig Wright were colleagues basically at the same time. And I think that the Oakland A's actually got the idea of numbers from what the Texas Rangers were doing.
How about that? Was there dietitian type stuff that you were open to as well? Because I think having a big steak and about 3 whiskey sours at midnight is probably not the best way to digest your meal on a post game. It'll put you to sleep in no time. But was vitamin and mineral nutrition and other kind of stuff were you open to that as well?
Yeah, we were approaching that in the late 80s, but what we were really in was strength training. And so once everything was digitized, then I think we were the first baseball team to have a weight room. And we did have a Nautilus equipment, but we also had free weights, which is basically unheard of. And pitchers got hurt and they blamed it on the weights and all that nonsense. But again, that has evolved. We turned a little coat room into a weight training room in an old stadium in Texas. And Tommy House, was really cutting edge on all of that stuff. And him being on my staff and being my right-hand guy, I followed his lead.
Yeah, hey, Bobby, I have a question for you. Would you today, if you were managing in 2025, would you want to because of sabermetrics? Isn't it a different game for a manager? That's my question to you.
No, it's the same game. It's just more information. And, what I always wanted was information, whether it was from the trainer or the coach or the mother-in-law or whatever, where the bartender or the elevator operator, wherever I could get information. I wanted information, and that's all that the metrics are giving today is information. And if you learn them, you learn how to work with it. It's just like a guy telling you he has a head cold, and it all works. Tommy House.
So Tom had a little bit to do with, hey, I'm learning this and I'm researching that. And then you were doing your own and then trying to get it to the players. Now, some guys wouldn't want anything to do with the weights, where other guys are all for it. What did you find was the best way for you to kind of oversee that, to where each guy could get whatever he wanted or needed in order to be the best that he could be on game day?
It's all individual workings. Some guys you let them the water and they didn't drink, and some guys you let them the water and they were doing the backstroke. So you have to deal with the individuals, and most players today like information. Not all players use the analytics that are presented to them. But again, I think most organizations have learned that you present, and if you present properly, then you're given some of the best chances to succeed.
Yeah. In today's game, Bobby, if you bring in a new pitcher, the other team's batters they've got the little pocket tablets that are with them, and they're looking at video as quickly and as much as they can before they've got to step up to the plate. Information. Where's this guy's release point? How hard does he throw? What are 3-4 top pitches? Everything that you would want to do in a scouting report, you're trying to get in just one little glimmer of moment before you actually step up to the plate.
Right.
None of that existed back in those days, but at least you were opening that, right?
It existed, but it didn't exist on a tablet. It
yes.
existed in our. We would give them the the pitch chart and the speeds, right. And you'd have to see words, numbers, and not videos.
Right.
The videos came around about in the mid '90s, where every hitter was videoed, and you saw what anyway. It has evolved, and it's evolved better. Yes.
Yeah. 8 years in Texas. A guy that turns out to be the president ends up being the one that ends up owning the team and all that. Just from a point of interest perspective, what happened in Texas that was, I expected this to take place, and this was exactly what happened, and versus what did you have no idea was going to take place, and then, just different things that occurred. You were 45 and 41 when you were let go there, but you finished second, you finished third a couple of times in the AL West. You got Nolan Ryan on the mound with you, a really good team. I think by the time you were done, Julio Franco, Rafael Palmeiro, Juan Gonzalez, Ruben Sierra, you had Brian Downing as your DH, Oil Can Boyd, Kevin Brown, Goose Gossage, Jose Guzman, Kenny Rogers, and some guy named Nolan Ryan were on the roster all at that time. You had a good team. Goodness gracious, what a roster.
Yeah, we were playing in the same division as the Oakland A's, who had a little advantage on us, a lot of great players, but an advantage. I played, as I mentioned, center field in Nolan's first no-hitter. I managed the 6th and 7th no-hitter. I managed his 5,000 strikeout game and 300th win. They were all spectacular. And, my clock is ticking, and I've got to get out of here pretty soon. So we're not going to get through the entire career of Bobby V on this one Zoom. But I can tell you that it was an honor to be with Nolan. We played in a really old stadium in a real bad conditions. The air conditioner was out half of the time, and it was 100 degrees every time we started a game.
Yeah.
But they were good teams. And what happened is I didn't want, I just had one of those things. I put my line in the sand and said I didn't want to play a guy. And the front office wanted to play a guy, and they decided to hire somebody else who would play the guy. And turned out the guy wasn't very good. So at least I knew I shouldn't have been playing him.
Well, okay.
And then I moved on, and I went to Japan for a year, and I managed the Mets for 7 years. And yesterday was the last game of the 2000 World Series, and also the last game of the Japan series that I won in 2005. And the Met thing was 2000, and I wish we could do this whole thing, but I don't think we can do the whole thing.
No. Yeah, I want to respect your time. Absolutely. Real quick before we go, did you ever, in the 8th or 9th inning of the no-hitters that Nolan had, did you ever just want to walk up to him and say, hey, just give me the ball, and just to see what his reaction would be? Or is it, no, this is a guy here, you don't mess with him. Nobody sits anywhere within 20 feet of the guy when he comes in during the time when you're hitting? What was it like around? I mean, you got to see a couple of these things, and you knew the magic that the man had.
Yeah, I think I managed 6 one-hitters and, two of the no-hitters. And no, Nolan was in his space when he pitched, and everyone respected that he was in his zone, and you didn't have to mess with it. Actually, the general manager of the L.A. Angels, Perry Manassian, was a 9-year-old bat boy for me in Texas when Nolan threw his 6th no-hitter, and he was the only one that Nolan talked to during the game. So That's all interesting stuff as time passes. Reflecting on wonderful experiences makes us all happy.
Hey, Bobby, I got two questions before you go.
Okay.
If you had to say, maybe you can't because you had a lot of them. What was your biggest thrill in baseball?
Yeah, I don't want to give a second rate to any of the wonderful experiences because, I might say, the first hit a guy got, or the first home run a guy got, or there are a lot of great experiences.
And then the next one, was there anybody, one specific person that you could say you look up to for your success as a career baseball?
Tommy Lasorda was everything. Tommy let me understand what to do in uniform, what out of uniform, how to. I watched him, in the Ronald Reagan's Oval Office, and I watched him in the clubhouse of Ogden, Utah. I saw everything that he did. I tried to learn from it, the good and the bad. And I could tell you it was 90% good as far as I'm concerned. And the bad was just because he aged. And sometimes when you age, you don't age as well as you'd like to. But Tommy Lasorda, I think, was the most spectacular person I've ever been around and I ever hope to be around.
Wow, that's great.
In terms of your business now with broadcasting, you have later today, you're going to be talking about the World Series. Is that correct?
Yeah, but it's not really a business. It's kind of just I enjoy talking baseball, and CBS HQ wanted me to be pre and post game, and I said, "What the hell? You're filming in my hometown of Stamford, Connecticut." I went back, and I'm back here doing it. I'm also watching my president of my film company be the executive producer of The Making of Rocky, which is going to be a great film. It's going to come out probably the 50th anniversary of the first Rocky movie ever. And I'm on set with him right now. So I'm in his trailer, as a matter of fact.
Huh.
But I'm going to try to get back and see how it's going.
Yeah. Real quick, for me, when I was done playing football and someone says, "Hey, do you want to talk about it?" Well, sure. What do you want me to say? How much homework do I need to do? It's not homework because it's stuff that you already know. Now, learning the roster for, let's say, tonight's games or something like that, that's, a part of it. But just talking about baseball, that came naturally for you, obviously, and you're good at it. You're articulate at it. And that was what I mean for your next business, the thing that you were able to do after managing was done. And to be able to call games and talk like you will be tonight about the teams that are playing and just trying to give a little nugget of information, just like you received when you were managing. Now that you're giving that to the audience. What was that like for you, just being able to do it? A pretty easy transition?
Well, I don't know how easy it was, but, one of those years after I got through playing, I got lucky enough to be the color man for Bob Costas's first game on NBC.
Wow.
And the executive producer, Michael Weissman, at the time, took me under his arm a little. And, what he said is, if you're ever going to do any of this stuff on TV, don't ever tell me anything that I already know. So, from then until now, I just try to give to the TV audience or anybody who's listening something they don't know and maybe enrich their day a little.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And who the next batter is going to be and how the manager is going to want to probably bring the lefty in and just try thinking ahead and stuff that you just did naturally for years and years and years and just making that available to the audience. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes that's exactly all it is.
Yeah. Just explaining what's going on in the game. It's whatever it takes place. Well, we want to be respectful of your time. We'd love to have you back, Bobby, if that would be possible sometime, to talk about your Met career, the World Series, all the things that we had stored up, and especially Japan. I think what an interesting revolutionary aspect for your life, and then being able to go over to a different country and appreciate how many great things that they have over there anyways, but also pretty good talented baseball players. We're seeing the fruit of that now in so many different Japanese players that are making it in the big leagues.
Yeah, there'll be a couple of them in the game tonight, at least one of them. I don't know if Sasaki gets in, but that guy Otani's pretty good. Listen, it's great being with you guys. I love it. Bob, you're great. You're great. Wonderful show, both of you guys. I've been honored to be on it. And if we're going to do a part 2, let me know.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, there he is, ladies and gentlemen. Bobby Valentine, you remember as a player, as a manager, and now also as a broadcaster. doing several different things for baseball. His love of the game obviously has transcended time, and for 50 years. For Bob Case, for Bobby Valentine, I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you for tuning in, everybody. You've been watching the Sports Page as a part of 100 Yards of Football. We appreciate you. And